There were heel factions. Then there were the Four Horsemen. Not just villains, the benchmark every heel stable that came after had to measure against. Formed in Jim Crockett Promotions in 1985, the Horsemen weren't born from boardroom plotting. They were forged from skill, dominance, and legitimate backstage respect. Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Olie Anderson, and Tully Blanchard weren't simply characters. They were elite performers whose reputations alone made promoters sweat. When these four walked into a locker room, whispers ran louder than the crowd's noise. Off-the-cuff moment became history. They didn't cheat because writers told them to. They dominated because they could. Every match, every angle, every feud carried real stakes and real fear, inside and outside the ring. They didn't just beat wrestlers, they made promoters pay for the privilege. Let's get the real origin straight. The Four Horsemen weren't a writer's gimmick that came together organically in the ring. The moment that created them is well documented. It started in late 1985, Jim Crockett Promotions. Ric Flair was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Arn Anderson was already a tough competitor. Olie Anderson was a veteran tag team bruiser. Tully Blanchard was emerging as a standout singles wrestler. What pulled them together? Ongoing interference and big matches. Shared top-tier feuds, especially against Dusty Rhodes. This was about dominance, not scripts. The name? Improvised. Arn Anderson recalls the story. A TV taping. Time was short. All four had to speak in the same interview. Arn looked at them and said the line, "You're looking at the Four Horsemen." It stuck immediately. The four-finger gesture appeared soon after. Early on, they cut promos together. They interfered in each other's matches. They became a consistent six-man tag and interference unit. Fans quickly learned that heel alliances could be more than one-off pairings. Manager James J. Dillon would join later. But the original identity? It came from the men themselves. They recognized their own power and seized it. Let's talk about what really made the Four Horsemen tick, and who they ran hot with. This wasn't cartoon rivalries, it was classic era, real crowd reactions, and legitimate backlash every time they showed up. The Horsemen's internal chemistry was built on a simple formula. Every man could go, and every man could draw heat. Ric Flair was the headliner, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion who fans loved to hate. Arn Anderson, the enforcer who didn't smile much and didn't sell lightly. Olie Anderson, a grizzled veteran who could grind a match into dust. Tully Blanchard, the wild card with nasty instincts who knew how to turn frustration into reaction. Together, they were tight and relentless. Arn himself said their success wasn't some fantasy booking trick. They gave fans what they paid to see, put-downs and paybacks, live on house shows and big arenas. It wasn't about jobbing out quickly. It was about earning your applause by getting your ass handed to you first. Their biggest real enemies weren't random challengers. They were stars who carried their own heat and dared to step into the ring with group horsemen. At the top of that list was Dusty Rhodes, the working man hero that every Horseman promo was built to antagonize. Rhodes wasn't just a rival. He was the defining foil of the era, representing the crowd opposite the Horsemen's limousine-riding, jet-flying arrogance. Their feud included savage parking lot attacks and brutal angles that made fans boil. This wasn't backstage storytelling. This was documented collisions between wrestling's two most passionate draw forces. The Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, also loomed large as enemies. Their power and popularity clashed with the Horsemen's arrogance, leading to multiple high-impact encounters on some of wrestling's earliest big cards, especially War Games. Magnum TA brought real heat too, especially with Tully Blanchard. Their rivalry climaxed in an I Quit match that became one of the most personal battles of the era. Then there was Sting, arguably the Horseman most destined to turn face. He fought Flair to a legendary 45-minute draw at Clash of the Champions, earned the fans, and eventually even joined the Horsemen briefly, only to be kicked out when he dared to challenge Flair for the NWA title. That rejection ignited one of the longest and most emotional rivalries of the era. And let's not forget Lex Luger, who started allied with them before breaking away and teaming with Sting. Their later clashes with Flair over the NWA title added another layer of heat. In a time when heel factions were rare, the Horsemen didn't just create enemies, they defined them. And every feud they had was rooted in real crowd investment and documented history. They didn't just chase rivals, they made them legends by beating the hell out of them. The Four Horsemen didn't just dominate matches, they dominated the locker room, the promotion, and anyone dumb enough to think they could step to them. Flair didn't just walk around as champion, he prowled like a cat deciding which faces were meat. Arn Anderson made sure nobody forgot you could get hurt in a tag match and still look like the toughest guy in the room. Olie Anderson grinded rookies down to dust before they realized he wasn't joking. Tully Blanchard would push you to the edge of panic in the ring, then smirk while your career stats looked like a crime scene. Every man in that group carried real heat, not fake booze, real tension. Their influence spread like a virus. Managers, referees, and promoters learned quickly that crossing them had consequences. If you didn't give them the spotlight they demanded, you got a stiff spine buster or a backstage gripe from Flair that could ruin your week. Faces who tried to outshine them often left bruised, embarrassed, or suddenly injured. Dusty Rhodes wasn't just a rival. He was the example every babyface used to measure themselves against the Horsemen, and every time Flair kicked him in the ribs or Tully stomped him down, the crowd ate it alive. Enemies piled up. Magnum TA, Road Warriors, Sting, and Lex Luger all had matches designed to humiliate them, punish them, and teach them what real competition looked like. Every feud was a calculated lesson. Even back then, wrestlers whispered in hallways, "If you end up in a match with the Horsemen, don't just bring your A game. Bring a helmet, body armor, and a lawyer." The legacy? They set the template for every heel faction after. DX, NWO, Bullet Club all followed the same blueprint: collective dominance, internal hierarchy, and ruthless enforcement. But none of them carried the chilling aura of the Horsemen in their prime. They weren't fun, they weren't friendly, they weren't pretending. They were the men who could make promoters sweat, faces question their career choices, and crowds cheer through sheer fear. And yes, they made every opponent's life miserable while smiling like idiots because they knew you'd pay to see them do it again next week. That's influence, that's legacy, that's what being a Four Horseman really meant. When people say the Four Horsemen were respected, that's true. When people say they were liked, that's a lie. One of the clearest examples is Lex Luger, not the TV rivalry. The real problem was work ethic. Arn Anderson has said repeatedly that Luger had the tools but didn't apply himself. Late to buildings, didn't listen, didn't take criticism well. That alone was enough to get on Olie Anderson's permanent shit list. Olie didn't hide it. In multiple interviews, he criticized Luger for being mentally soft and relying on his look instead of fundamentals. To Olie, that was unforgivable. If you didn't work hard, you weren't just useless. You were offensive. Then there's Sid Vicious. This wasn't rivalry, this was mistrust. Sid's size got him pushed. His unpredictability got him quietly resented. Arn and Flair have both alluded to Sid being unsafe, unreliable, and not someone you trusted in pressure situations. The infamous scissors incident later on only confirmed what many already felt. They didn't hate him loudly. They hated him by keeping distance. Roma was seen as someone who didn't earn the spot and didn't understand the standard. Among the Horsemen, that's worse than being bad. It means you dilute the brand. Even younger talent caught heat. The Horsemen were notorious for freezing people out backstage if they felt someone skipped dues or got arrogant too early. You didn't get yelled at. You got ignored, which in wrestling is worse. And here's the uncomfortable truth. They didn't just hate outsiders. They often hated what the business was becoming. Flash over fundamentals, bodies over timing, politics without professionalism. By the early 90s, that frustration was real, vocal, and bitter. These weren't misunderstood rebels. They were difficult men with rigid standards, short tempers, and zero tolerance. Lex Luger. This one was never subtle. The problem wasn't his look. It wasn't his push, it was his effort. Arn Anderson has repeatedly said Luger had everything physically and didn't apply himself consistently. Late to buildings, slow to absorb criticism, didn't grind. For Olie Anderson, that wasn't a flaw, it was a personal insult. If you coasted, you weren't learning, you were wasting everyone's time. Paul Roma. This is the cleanest case. Arn Anderson flat out said Roma didn't belong in the Horsemen. No spin, no soft landing. He wasn't trusted to maintain the standard. In a group built on precision and reputation, being seen as the weak link was career poison. Roma never shook that label. Then there's Sid Vicious, not hated loudly, avoided quietly. Size got him opportunities. Unpredictability made veterans cautious. The Horsemen valued control, timing, and trust. Sid was seen as volatile, physically and mentally. When wrestlers don't trust you, they don't complain. They distance themselves. Fast-tracked talent. This wasn't about names. It was about attitude. If you skipped dues, acted entitled, or strutted without substance, you were done. The Horsemen didn't yell, they didn't mentor, they froze you out. No rides, no advice, no protection. Here's the truth that gets skipped. They weren't misunderstood rebels. They were rigid, demanding, and unapologetic. Some called them bullies, others called them gatekeepers. They didn't correct either label. If you weren't good enough, tough enough, or serious enough, they didn't hate you loudly. They just made sure you didn't matter. By the end of the 1980s, the Four Horsemen weren't just a group. They were a movable franchise of dominance and instability that kept reshaping itself to stay relevant and feared. After their most dreaded lineup, Flair, Arn, Olie, and Tully, members began leaving for greener pastures, which would rewrite the faction's DNA. Lex Luger briefly replaced Olie in 1987, but was booted out by year's end for not fitting the group's ruthless rhythm. He would go on to feud with them and recruit their next greatest recruit. Barry Windham turned on Luger, joined the Horsemen, and gave the stable arguably its greatest run ever, holding United States gold while Flair and the tag champs ruled the rest of the title scene. That lineup didn't last. In 1988, Arn and Tully bolted for the WWF as the Brain Busters, while Windham got injured and left for the WWF as the Widowmaker. With half the men dispersed, puppet master changes began, and what followed was less dominance and more survival mode. NWA became WCW after Ted Turner's buyout, and the Horsemen were reborn in 1989 with a shocking addition. Sting alongside Flair, Arn, and Olie. It looked like a crazy alliance, but Sting asked to be removed when he wanted to chase Flair's title alone, proving even Horsemen could get tired of riding with these guys. WCW would keep the group alive, bringing Sid Vicious, and later welcoming back Barry Windham in 1990 as Olie moved into a manager role. This version feuded with top babyfaces, Sting, Lex Luger, the Steiners, Paul Orndorff, Junkyard Dog, and what was less the unstoppable Horsemen, a more ragged coalition with serious backstage friction under new management. They didn't stay gone. 1993's attempted reunion brought back Flair, Arn, and Olie, but Tully wasn't signed, and Paul Roma was tagged in. This version is often called the Three Horsemen, and was not the masterpiece of their heyday, showing that without core players, the mystique died quick. A major revival in 1995 once again placed Horsemen in the spotlight, with Chris Benoit, Brian Pillman, Steve Mongo McMichael joining Flair and Arn. This group actually worked feuds against NWO forces, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger, but the rise of the NWO meant even the Horsemen were secondary attractions. By late 1997, internal derailments, including Curt Hennig's betrayal in War Games, saw the faction officially eclipsed by Hollywood Hogan's clique. Their final incarnation in 1998-99 included Flair, Benoit, Dean Malenko, McMichael, and Olie as manager once more. Fans cheered, it felt big, until WCW's booking chaos and backstage politics sidelined them again. Benoit and Malenko eventually walked to form the Revolution, and with McMichael gone, the Horsemen quietly dissolved forever by 1999. Their legacy still drips into every faction booking today. WWE's evolution was built on the exact Horseman formula, a proven leader with rising stars in his orbit dominating titles. NWO and DX may have looked flashier, but the model they exploited, group dominance, ego rivalry, championship collection, and backstage heat, was first perfected by these four. The Four Horsemen weren't misunderstood, they weren't victims of jealousy, they were elite workers with brutal standards and zero tolerance. If you didn't work hard, they hated you. If you were unsafe, they avoided you. If you were pushed without earning it, they remembered. They built greatness while burning bridges, and they didn't lose sleep over either. Some call that bullying, others call it gatekeeping. The truth is simpler. They believed wrestling was serious business, and if you weren't serious enough, they made sure you knew it. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the real Four Horsemen, smash that like and hit subscribe. We're dropping the backstage heat that the WWE won't talk about, every feud, every contempt, every locker room nightmare. Stay tuned because the next story will make your jaw hit the floor. Thanks for watching.